you all for being here again. Buen provecho. Or in another culture, I do admire bon appetit. Everyone on earth has a culture, whether they choose to embrace their heritage or if they choose to ignore it. I myself am going to talk about being part Bahamian and part Puerto Rican. I'll be speaking on the experience of myself and my friends and family. Lastly, I'll talk about a culture that I admire, which is the Italian culture. Now, let's begin. My father was born and raised in Bahamas, which is made up of 700 islands, the capital being Nassau. He was born and raised up until the age of 19 years old. Now, having a father that was born and raised in Bahamas really gives me an insight on what it truly means to be a Bahamian. The way that he acts and behaves, even the way that he speaks, and the way that he tells me about stories on the island. Now, the way that it affects me truly is because in the Bahamian culture, the predominant religion is Christianity. So my father chose to introduce that to me, and I in turn chose to accept it. Now, let's talk about my mother. My mother is Puerto Rican of African descent. Now, she was not born and raised in Puerto Rico, but her mother and father were. So her father was born in a city called Aguadilla, I say it right, and her mother was born in a city called Rio Piedra. Yes. Now, her parents eventually chose to move to a city called New York City, and which is where they had my mother. So there they exposed my mother to the cultural language, being Spanish, and every night they would cook my mother Puerto Rican dishes. Now that my mother has her own family, she chose to try to attempt to pass on the language to me and the Puerto Rican dishes every night. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I will talk about a culture that I do admire, which is the Italian culture. So, I admire the Italian culture simply because of their family and friend-oriented lifestyle. I know Italians, and they love to sit around a freshly cooked meal and just enjoy each other's time. Another thing that I admire is the passion that they have. The passion, whether they, just the way that they put their food together, or the way that they use their hands when they talk, because everyone knows that. One other thing that I know about in Italy is from the hours of 1 p.m. to 4 p.m., it's something called the siesta, if you know. That's during the lunch break where they take their naps. Any culture that has a nap built into their schedule is a culture that I like. My experience of being half Bahamian, half Puerto Rican, have awarded me the chance to just be a part of two different traditions and customs. For example, in the Bahamian culture, there's something called the Junkanoo. So basically that's a parade that celebrates the slaves being brought to the West Indies. Now, in the Puerto Rican culture, there's something called Dia de Reyes, which is basically like a second Christmas, but it celebrates the three kings who visited Jesus. Yes. Now, being part Bahamian and Puerto Rican helps me to appreciate different customs and traditions in other cultures, such as the Italian culture. In closing, we all acknowledge that in every culture there are different characteristics and traditions that we choose to celebrate. They make us different, but they also bring us closer together. So I believe that if we take a chance to look at the beauty and our differences and the similarities in our likeness, we will be able to all be together. And we are done.